So The Wager by David Grann has been on the New York Times bestseller list, I think for 22 weeks at this point. And I finally got a copy of it and was able to read it. I just picked it up from the library and read it over the past couple days, and I really liked it. I would probably not say it's worth buying unless you just like know already that you love those kind of tales, but I definitely think it is worth borrowing. So I did have one very specific gripe with the book though, and it comes from this idea of how you tell a terrible story, essentially. The book that I could most easily compare this to is the book Flyboys, which is about the pilots in World War II, but there's a lot of that book that deals with really, really terrible stuff that happened in World War II and just the atrocities that people commit in wartime. And the thing with that book and the feeling that I got reading that book was that, I can't remember his name now, Bradley something I think, who authored that book. He wrote it from a place of, this book is looking at these stories of the depravity of humanity and recognizing that I'm no better and we're no better, and for all of our thinking that we're better and more civilized and whatever, we're really not. There's a sinful nature to humanity that has fallen, that just goes through all of us, right? And on our own we just fall right back into it, right? And the thing about this book from David is that I felt like he had kind of the same idea of this being a story of an exploration of depravity, but it came from a place of, for lack of a better term, like a very modern liberal viewpoint to it, of just like, oh, and this is the terrible empire, and they were just the servants of the terrible empire going and conquering all the native people and all this stuff, right? And this underlying feeling like it's coming from this place of pride and this place of like, but I wouldn't do that. Like, we're past that, you know, and those of us who know better now, but that would never be a thing that we would have to deal with and whatever. And it was a really interesting experience to read that same kind of thing, because it's not that I'm uncomfortable with stories of human depravity, or not that I'm uncomfortable with like the real truth of the history of a thing, right? It's just this idea that when you're telling these stories, the truth of the matter is you wouldn't have been any different if you were in their situation, because you're just as sinful and just as flawed of a human as they are. And so there's an underlying humility that you should come at these stories with, and this understanding of there, but for the grace of God go I. And the one complaint, again, that I had with this book was that I felt like David's approach to it was more of a, oh, look at how terrible all this was, and these terrible colonialists and the terrible empire trying to go and take care of all the natives, and they only viewed people as savages and whatever, and all this stuff. And it's no recognition that like, yeah, but even though we think we're better, and even though we think we're way more sophisticated and way above that and whatever, we're not, because human nature is human nature. And at the core of it, that's what it is. And we're all sinful and we're all fallen, and none of us are any better when it really comes down to it. And so, yeah, just a very interesting stuff I've been thinking of in the past hour or so since I finished that book. But if you are interested in it, I would definitely say pick it up. And yeah, that's all I got for now. Peace.